The information shared on the Allo podcast is not intended as medical advice. Your medical care decisions should be made in consultation with your physician who is familiar with your specific case. Welcome to the Allo podcast from the Allo Hope Foundation. I'm Molly Sherwood.
And I'm Bethany Weathersby, here today with two of our favorite friends and coworkers and fellow Allo moms, Rose Morage and Katie Shanahan.
And I am Rose Morage. So glad to be back on the Allo podcast.
And we're ready to record after dragging Eric, our producer, through our audio tweaking for the last 65 minutes.
We have great vibes entering this. This is going to be great.
Yes.
And for our new listeners, Katie is our Director of Development at the Allo Hope Foundation, and Rose is our Allo Hope Ambassador to Kenya. If you have not heard their stories yet, you can go back to season 2 and listen to both of their personal stories through HDFN. Those episodes are so good, and they very obviously demonstrate why Katie and Rose are a part of AHF. So please go back and listen to those. Both are in season 2. Katie's was episode 3, and Rose's was a 2-parter at the very end of the season. And Rose's story in particular really sets the tone for why we have today's episode. So I would really recommend dedicating some time to listening to her episodes for anybody who hasn't already. They are just incredibly humbling and eye-opening. And today we get to talk about Africa,
Yay.
A very real love that we all randomly had before even knowing each other.
Yes. Actually, Molly, Katie, and I kind of have an obsession. It's a little bit of an obsession, I would say, with Africa that actually dates back to before we even knew each other. And then when we met Rose, we became even more obsessed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually went to Africa for my honeymoon when a lot of people thought that that's not the classic honeymoon destination.
Sure.
It's amazing.
But they're wrong. It's awesome.
I just love elephants, and it was like my life dream to go on safari in Africa. And we got to do that.
And you cried.
And I did cry.
Yeah.
I sure did.
And I am African. You guys,
Yeah.
that's so awkward.
I am the real African here. And I actually live here, you guys.
Yes.
And today we'll be diving into the real stories, real needs, and the real hope that fuel our work together in Kenya and surrounding countries. And I'm really excited to share more about HDFN in Kenya beyond my own personal experience and just show everyone how resilient women are here, and work still needs to be done, of course, to make sure every woman and baby has access to the basic care they need. And of course, I'm bringing my 3 white sisters along with me for all of this.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so
Yay.
much.
As
I also
usual.
just want to clarify, because I feel like I made it weird when I was like, I'm an African. I just grew up in Africa. I don't know. Yeah, just want to clarify.
Did you put that in your college applications? Because it would have been really smart.
No, my sister, when we came back, one of my sisters was in the 2nd grade, and she always would check African American on like forms and things for tests or whatever. Because she was born there. And so we were like, no, that's not what that's not what that means. But yeah.
That would be confusing for
I
a
know.
2nd grader.
African
Yeah,
American.
She didn't get it, but that's okay. All right.
All right. Well, maybe we should start by recapping how Rose went from not even knowing she had this disease to being a disease expert and the AHF ambassador in a matter of 2 years. Can you give us a recap of your story, Rose?
Oh, this is really, really hard because I don't. Do you guys think it's possible? I don't think
I
so.
don't know, man.
But
I don't know.
I am gonna give it a try. And
Okay.
well, after going through 2 HDFN losses, but I did not know that by then. Several false antibody screen tests or antibody screening, and lots of mixed ideas, and fear. I had nowhere else to turn to but for our dear internet. I'm so thankful for the internet today.
Yeah.
From trying to find local support groups to creating WhatsApp groups with and for women who sounded like they were going through the same thing I was going through. And fortunately, I'd like to say I was able to find the AHF support group on Facebook, the Al Hope Foundation support group on Facebook, which came in handy. And I was able to link up with Bethany first, and eventually I did with the whole team. And we were able to narrow down everything. And at the long end, at the long end, my antibody screen, it's not funny, but sometimes I laugh about it because
I
it just
know.
sounds like some drama, some TV drama.
Yeah. It's kind of,
Yeah.
it's like unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a
Yes,
laugh
that's what
of
it is.
unbelief.
It's like so unbelievable you have to laugh
Yeah.
sometimes. It just
I
how
know.
incredible. Yeah.
So at the long end, my antibody screen turned out positive with a critical titer of 256. And I think I was about 11 or 12 weeks gestation. Do you remember that, Bethany? I think I was 12, I think.
Yeah, because I remember like we're approaching time for MCA scans, but we don't even know if you have this disease, right? That was super
Exactly.
stressful. And then also just want to say that was your third pregnancy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you guys call me all sorts of things, but mostly crazy. But I was super happy because I found
Yeah.
at least something. I had something. In this case, something to blame for my losses. And finally, I found the root cause of my baby losses, and at least I could tell someone that this is because of this. While before, I had no idea. So adding on to all of the knowledge I had gotten from the AHF website, I was ready to face it on. And a few months after our baby loss, our second baby loss, that is, I accidentally, wink, wink, I accidentally got pregnant, and it was a whole different journey, like a whole different journey. I mean, it is so hard to like recap my story, you guys, in just a few minutes. While you all know it takes at least, and I mean at least an hour to just
For
get
sure.
it down. Yeah, to give it justice. And good thing we have it on season 2 as a special 2-part episode. And we would want to make sure that we listen to that if we haven't.
That was actually a really good condensed sort of intro to your story, and it makes me want to go back and listen actually and hear it all the way through
Well, me too.
to see more about how you ended up with our little miracle baby child that we all share together. Anyway, very impressive, Rose.
Well, it sure wasn't easy.
Yeah, that was good.
Bethany, what was all of that journey like from your perspective? I mean, I know you've walked with hundreds of moms through their journeys with HDFN, and obviously something in Rose made her also the perfect person for a bigger role in what she's doing now at the Aloe Hope Foundation.
Right. Yeah, Rose is special. I mean, everyone's special, but when Rose reached out and we got to know each other a bit, I realized how incredibly determined she was to get answers, to educate herself on all of the possibilities, and to try to figure out what had happened to her babies. And I was so impressed also by the way that she, even during like some of the most traumatic times in her life, she was trying to reach out to other people in her community, other women who were Rh negative or had lost babies. Like she was a force, even in the midst of that third pregnancy you were talking about, Rose, how all of that you had to do, the stress, and then coming to the US and IUTs, throughout all of that, Rose was supporting other moms. And she was also at the same time educating us at Aloe Hope, right, guys? Like we were learning so much from her. And we realized that, oh, this is super important to have a patient educate us on her culture and what the care looks like in her region and what patients are going through. And only then can we actually be able to help those patients, right? And so naturally, we snatched her up and brought her on staff at Aloe Hope. And Molly, I think you and I were actually, I think before Rose even gave birth, we were
Yes,
asking her to please come and work for us.
seems like a great time to ask somebody to do that.
Right.
Just while she's taking on an entirely new country,
Oh.
intrauterine transfusions, baby in the NICU. We just thought we would just offer her a job.
Yeah.
So, okay, the organization for this episode is we thought it'd be interesting to sort of revive the 5 pillars concept and talk through an allo-immunized mother's trajectory and ask Rose some questions about what each phase looks like in that ideal care for HDFN in Kenya. So Bethany,
That
so
was interesting.
So Bethany immediately turned it into an educational lecture. We're going to use the 5 pillars of ideal care to structure our questions.
Yes, I can't help it. The bossiness it runs through my veins. The kindergarten teacher in me, it always comes out. But yeah, okay, so let me just educate right now since I'm feeling bossy. Okay, so the 5 pillars of HDFN care are prevention, diagnosis, monitoring, treatment, and maternal support. So I guess let's start with prevention. Katie, we know how much you love some RH prevention. Do you want to start us off there?
Prevention is only available for women at risk of developing anti-D antibodies. And as most of our listeners know, it's super important because if you have this one pillar well established and prevention is in place, you don't need the other pillars because you can avoid HDFN almost completely, at least with anti-D antibodies. So for a quick refresher, mothers who have a negative blood type don't have the D antigen in their blood. So if they are pregnant with a baby who does, which is a positive blood type, they could develop anti-D antibodies if they don't receive prevention. So in the US and other developed nations, we routinely give Rh immune globulin, most commonly known as RhoGAM, to all women with a negative blood type during pregnancy. But unfortunately, that just isn't the reality everywhere, especially in developing countries. Access isn't universal. It can be limited, expensive, or just not prioritized. And for many other countries in the world, that's the reality, including Kenya. So, Rose, first of all, is Rh immune globulin even available in Kenya? Can you tell us more about that?
I'm gonna prep for this. So yes, it is available, but it's extremely expensive, and it's not always offered where they should be. Also, in Kenya and in many other developing countries, we don't have the same brands of medications that you do in the US or other developed countries. And some of the medications that are imported that is, are not made with the same safeguards. Not tested for their effectiveness like they should be. And sometimes, even by the time they make it through customs and importing, they already are expired.
That is one of the many things that completely blew my mind as we started to learn about this whole picture from you. So, that limitation of having access to maybe medications that were developed outside of the US and not under FDA or European regulations, and even having difficulties importing them on time. It also applies to other important things that you wouldn't think about, like birth control medications for moms who need more time to plan a pregnancy, especially if they have this disease, or even like the testing reagents that you need in the lab to do antibody testing or other screening. And even if you do get the anti-D injection, there isn't as much certainty about what you are receiving. if it hasn't been through the same clinical development safeguards that maybe we would assume they would have, for a situation like ROGAM. And I feel like we have to point out all of these things because before you taught us this, I had absolutely no idea. So it's just super informative. It gives a lot of perspective to this. So if somebody is able to afford it, how much does one dose of Rh immune globulin or the anti-D injection cost?
Well, it does really depend on the hospital or pharmacy you're going to, but it ranges from $54 to $85. $85, you guys. And 54 in this case would be the lowest it can be. And at times it's
Wow.
been even higher than that. It just depends on where you're getting it from because there really isn't pricing protection in the pharmacies to keep the prices at a fixed amount.
And Rose, can you
Wow.
explain how much money that means to the average Kenyan family? Because here, to some people, it might not seem like a lot, but explain to us how much money $54 can buy them and how hard it is to earn that much money.
To certain people, that's like how, to most people, that is, that's like half of what you earn in a month. And another issue is that prenatal care in general is not as accessible as it is in some other countries. So many women don't even get to see a doctor until they're in their second or third trimester, if they ever do at all. So prevention is missed by a lot of pregnant women simply because they cannot afford or they're starting their prenatal care much later.
That's so heartbreaking, but it's also very valid, right? Like if you are going to choose between, buying groceries or getting a dose of Rogam,
Yeah.
obviously you're going to choose to feed your family.
Yeah, and what a choice to have to make to even be in that situation as a
Yeah.
mother, Rose, do you think that most women understand the importance of that early prenatal care, especially for Rh negative women? Because I honestly, before I had these antibodies with my first two pregnancies, I didn't even know why I needed to get in so early to see my OB. I remember like, oh yeah, I want to go in for the first ultrasound, but kind of like, what's the point of having an appointment with my OB? And so I'm just wondering if there's an understanding of how important that is for Rh negative women.
Um, I really wish I had the confidence to say yes, but
Mm,
then unfortunately, most women don't understand the importance of, especially when we talk about women living in rural areas where there's less exposure and limited to no education or awareness. Many of them receive no prenatal care and they just give birth on their own or just get
wow.
maybe a neighbor who has experience
Oh my
like
gosh.
helping people give birth. So what happens to those moms then, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is taking me back to our day at Ruai Secondary School, which is an all girls school in Nairobi, where we were teaching the girls about the importance of knowing their blood type so they can protect their health and their future baby's health because it takes so much planning and awareness in advance to be able to arrange for prevention when it's possible. Those girls were amazing.
They
They were
were.
so attentive. They were so fun.
I know. They were, and they're teenagers. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting that.
They were so much cooler than us.
I know. They were. They're my heroes. Okay. And then, Rose, remind us in your not first trimester, in your first pregnancy with Alexis, did you get the Rh immunoglobulin injection when you needed it?
I did get it, but not
Mm-hmm.
when I first had some bleeding. I did have some
That's
bleeding
right.
um, during my
Right.
first pregnancy. And I had to wait for like, it was 3 weeks. Yeah, it was 3 weeks until
Right.
the routine 28-week dose. And I honestly wonder if
Mm-hmm.
that delay is when I became sensitized. Sometimes I think it is.
Mm-hmm.
And this is also an issue I see, misunderstandings about who needs. We call it NTD here.
Okay.
And when it should be administered. And more awareness and education is desperately needed, Bethany, for sure.
Yeah.
That's so true. And unfortunately, there are many developing countries who are in similar situations. There's this one study that showed about 50% of the women who need the anti D injection worldwide do not get it. We can link to that study in the show notes. That equates to so many preventable deaths of HDFN because, you know, we always talk about how HDFN is a rare disease. And yeah, it is in the US and probably in most European countries. But that's not necessarily true when there's not access to prevention. And actually, one of our partners is called the Wire Foundation, spelled spelled WIRHE. Get it? RH, you know, is solely focused on bringing that number down to zero, and they're really focused on education and prevention by administering anti-D and just sort of a global distribution campaign of education about how important that is. So look them up too. They are an awesome group.
And that's kind of where we've stepped in to try and help too, to try and raise awareness through educational resources, especially about the importance of knowing your blood type and pregnancy planning if you are Rh negative. And something that we're all, I think, really thrilled about is we are helping to provide doses of Rh immune globulin to patients in Kenya who otherwise wouldn't have access due to cost or availability. And right now we're only able to do 5 doses a month. But when Rose will send us pictures of women that have received the medication, and it's just like so heartwarming to know that that's potentially a case of HDFN that we helped prevent.
And Rose, you manage all of that. You manage people contacting you or hospitals contacting you on behalf of a patient. You arrange the payment and the receipts and the photos, and you send it to us and you log everything. I mean, that's just like a tiny smidgen of what you do. It's incredible.
Thank you.
Okay.
Agree.
That was like the tiniest micro session ever on the prevention issue in Kenya. So let's go to the next pillar, which is diagnosis. There's been a lot of success in countries who are able to set up a system where every pregnant woman receives an antibody screen in their first trimester. So, Rose, remind our listeners about your own diagnosis in Kenya. What did that look like? And was that type of screen available to you early in pregnancy?
Well, despite having severe disease and losing 2 babies to HDFN, I didn't receive a diagnosis of maternal alloimmunization until I did my own research, you guys. And and we reached out to the Ella Hope Foundation Medical Advisory Board for advice on my case, and I stood in line for hours. And I remember that day, particularly that day, it was raining, and I was trying to get my own medical records and my son's medical records, and then sending my blood off to a lab in South Africa. And I just wanted, well, it was simply for an accurate ICT test. It was really a huge unsolved mystery that I finally got the answer to after years of wondering what it was. I felt like some load on my back was lifted off, you know?
Yeah. That's so insane. It's too much. It feels like way too much work. Like you just made me tired listening to that. I remember when you were going through that. And by the way, you were pregnant, standing in the rain for hours trying to get your son's medical records to figure out, to try to self-diagnose because you had not received a diagnosis.
And you had to take off work too, right, Rose? Like every time you had to go do something for that long, you were taking off time from work.
Yeah. Oh,
Exactly.
yeah.
And it wasn't easy.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think getting an accurate test result has been kind of an unexpected barrier for some women. And I know that you work with a lot of other alloimmunized patients, Rose. So can you tell us how most of them got diagnosed, or did they get diagnosed?
Um, Honestly, a lot of them aren't officially diagnosed yet when they reach out to
Mm.
me. So, it's they often have lost a child, especially more than one. And once they hear about rhesus disease and having a negative blood type, they start to wonder, just like I did. And they
Mm-hmm.
reach out to us, and I link up with them, I mean, and we talk together and see if it sounds like HDFN. That reminds me of Bethany and I when we first met. And we did find a lab that does give accurate ICT tests now. And we have partnered with them to cover the cost of that antibody screen if someone reaches out to us and has a medical history that may be sounding like HDFN.
I still remember that first patient meeting on our first trip that we had, and we were finally able to offer some real answers to women who suspected they might be alloimmunized. And almost all of them had lost babies. A lot of them were multiple losses and shared just like heartbreaking stories with us. I think most of us were crying for the majority of that day. And it was honestly just really hard because all we could offer in that moment was clarity about their diagnosis and education. And it just felt like not enough. But what struck me really was how grateful some of them were just for that diagnosis. And it kind of dawned on me that finally having a name for what happened and finally understanding why they might have lost their babies seemed to carry so much weight, more weight than we probably could have even imagined. It was in a way that felt even more intense than what we would maybe see here in the US. And why do you think that is, Rose?
Katie, it's honestly one thing to lose a baby, and I'm gonna speak this from my own experience. It's one thing to lose a baby, and another to do so and not even know why, not even have the slightest clue why it happened. And I think this is where closure is important, because speaking from a place where a mother will lose a child or two and people will end up blaming it on her, and to add salt to an injury, talk about, oh, this is the one, this is the cursed one, or something like that, or, well, she's like that, she's cursed. Well, that's really a hard place to be, because I've been in those shoes. I've been in those shoes before. And I'd like to say that accurate diagnosis not only is important for the medical or physical well-being of the patient, but it's also so important for the mental, emotional well-being of the mother in this case, especially here back at home in Kenya.
That is such a good point, Rose, and something that I think that many of us might not have thought about if you hadn't said it out loud. And every woman deserves an accurate diagnosis. And it sounds like, in some ways, just knowing what's going on in your body can be empowering, even though it's also devastating to process and plan for the future. So, is there a way to diagnose HDFN in a baby when the baby is born, even if we don't know about the mom's antibody status? Because typically, when we can diagnose HDFN after birth with a direct Coombs test or a DCT that's done sometimes on the cord blood. Is that easily accessible?
Depends by which hospital you go to, and if at all the mom did go to deliver at a hospital. So compared to the antibody screens in the moms, this seems to be done more often and more accurately. But the next step is knowing what to do with that information and having the resources like the phototherapy lights and the blood available for transfusion. And a lot of moms are not told that their babies have these results. So we don't really have access to any electronic medical records to read our baby's lab results. Like I only found out my son's, my son Max, I only found out that he had a positive DAT much later after I stood in line for hours. 4 hours, not 4 hours, as you
Yes.
may understand it, but for many hours
Oh my gosh, Rose.
to request, for a paper copy. And they even asked me to bring them back to them once they gave them to me, and I was like, I am definitely gonna bring them back, and I
that's
ran
crazy.
as fast as I could
Oh my gosh.
and never went
cannot-
back.
I cannot.
Wow.
Oh, I cannot imagine.
They're like, you didn't
They're
bring
gonna
it
hear
back.
this and remember me. I remember when I was getting treatment in the US, you
Yeah.
guys, and it was like totally different. They offered me a disc that had like my ultrasound images and everything, and I was completely shocked and couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe
Right.
I get to keep this, so
Wow.
this is mine. And it
Yeah.
it was just
Man,
different.
I bet that felt very kind of comforting and also empowering to just have that and keep it without a fight. I remember, Katie, I'm thinking about when we were in Kenya a couple of years ago and we were visiting a hospital in Nairobi, and we were just kind of walking through one of the main areas, and there was just a large table with like papers all over it and then vials of blood. I think that the goal was to put the vial on top of the paper to the patient that whose blood that was. But it was kind of helter skelter, and you know, it could have gotten so mixed up so easily. And it's paper records for patients.
Yeah, they didn't have like labels or anything.
and like
yeah.
right,
Yeah.
It was just propped. Like, let's hope this sticks with the right paper. You know. But
Oh
it
my
just
gosh.
feels like it really is a privilege to have a diagnosis, and I think that we overlook that, or maybe we don't recognize that gift that we have automatically, you know. Although I will say it's terrible to get this diagnosis in any form, and I think that's usually what's on our mind, right, when we're hearing the diagnosis, not like I'm so grateful. But it's still it's so wonderful that we have that, and hopefully all women will have that one day. That's our goal. So now let's talk about the next pillar after diagnosis. Let's say you are diagnosed or you do have these antibodies. What do we do next? We look at the monitoring. And so actually, this one is where we do see a lot of gaps in care here in the US and other countries around the world. My own daughter, Lucy, as most of our listeners know, she did not receive the monitoring that she needed during my pregnancy. And then by the time we did discover her fetal anemia, it was actually too late to properly treat it. So that, I don't know, this is kind of a common issue.
It's something that we hear a lot, unfortunately. And when we're talking about HDFN prenatally, there's two types of monitoring. There's risk assessment and fetal assessment. And risk assessment's done by testing the mother's antibody titer and the baby's antigen status, whether that be through paternal testing or fetal testing. And fetal assessment is for those with a baby who could be at risk for HDFN. And we do this by performing MCA Doppler ultrasounds to monitor for fetal anemia, preferably weekly. That's kind of the gold standard. When we are looking at HDFN neonatally, monitoring is done through timely blood tests to keep a close eye on bilirubin and hemoglobin. So that's kind of what we're used to here. Rose, what does the risk assessment look like in Kenya? Do they have antibody titer tests?
I can't think of anyone who has ever had or rather who's been able to find out their baby's antigen status here, or even their partner's antigen status. we don't know if our baby is antigen positive or negative, and we don't know if the baby's father is antigen positive or negative, or whether they're homozygous or heterozygous. It's actually very rare to even find a hospital here that offers tighter testing. It's that bad, you guys. And the ones that do are like usually private hospitals or very expensive laboratories, sometimes not in Kenya. Most people here have the national insurance cover, which is quite affordable for most people, I think, but it only covers so much medical care, and so wealthier people can afford to have private insurance, which means they can be treated at private hospitals where they provide higher quality care. So it is rare to find a hospital that provides tighter testing.
What about even finding out what antibody the person has? I know since the anti-D injections are so difficult to access, it's probably going to be anti-D, but what if somebody has a different antibody?
Only, well, that's another problem because, again, only a couple of private hospitals, I mean, private labs, not even necessarily here in Kenya can do that. So NTD is the main concern, but still other antibodies do sometimes happen. And then I know this is different from prevention, but it's really hard to like do anything with the knowledge of having an antibody other than D, because as far as we know, it's not possible in Kenya to cross match blood beyond the D antigen. So if someone has anti-E and a baby with HDFN from anti-E needs a transfusion, we have no real way to find and screen for blood that doesn't have BA antigen.
I remember when I found this out, Rose, it was such a shock to me as someone who does not have anti-D antibodies, that like I would not be able to receive an accurate antibody diagnosis and ID in Kenya. So that's something my eyes were kind of open to as we learned all of this. And these challenges are not actually unique to Kenya. Of course, every country is slightly different when we think about what is medically accessible. But we should point out that many mothers experience these same barriers, especially in sub-Saharan Africa and East Asia, and even sometimes in high-index countries too, depending on what care is offered. But yeah, these limitations are present in a lot of countries, unfortunately.
You reminded me of that book that's called Africa is Not a Country, which they clearly made for white people. Because, Rose, have you ever heard of that book?
I am just hearing.
Oh my gosh.
I'm hearing it. I'm just getting it from you.
Yeah, well,
now.
probably
I've
because
never
you
heard
don't
of
need
that.
it. Obviously, we do. Oh my god.
Well, in this context, though, it's still helpful to know that many countries share in these healthcare burdens for our disease.
Right.
So what about MCA Doppler scans? Are those available for patients who need them?
These are even more rare to find, Katie. And again, if you find one, it'll be from a private hospital and really expensive, and sometimes not very accurate because our rather old version equipment.
So if someone does manage to find one of the couple centers that has an ultrasound with the ability of doing MCA Doppler scans, is it hard to arrange those scans and get to them and have multiple?
Well, yes. First of all, it's very like hard over here to travel. It's not easy. It's really not easy. There's things like traffic, road closures, accidents, and the public transportation can be unreliable. Sometimes the public buses break down. They get in accidents, or sometimes they don't even show up on time. And oftentimes you need to take off work to go to an appointment, which can be difficult because it affects a family's income. And cost is a major prohibitive factor for families. And we have seen lately that even those places that can do MCA Dopplers will only do them every 3 or 4 weeks, which is just really not enough to safely monitor a baby for anemia. And I've seen babies lose their lives because they didn't receive monitoring that they actually needed.
So after birth, let's talk about the monitoring after birth. The best way to monitor HDFN babies is through timely blood tests, starting with that cord blood test, actually, right after the baby is born. Rose, do you know if most babies actually have their cord blood tested there when they're born?
Well, unfortunately, no. Most babies don't get that. And I would like to refer back to Max, our second baby, who we lost at 3 days. He did not get to, he didn't get to get this test until he was like 12 hours old.
I remember.
Yeah,
And it's the timing is so crucial, right? With HDFN.
it is.
Yeah.
It really is.
I remember when we were touring a hospital in Kenya, I think earlier this year, they explained that labs on babies in the NICU are usually drawn first around 12 to 24 hours after birth. And then it takes the lab sometimes up to, I think they said 24 hours to actually get the result. Or did they say 48?
I think it was like 24
Rose,
to
do you remember?
48. It was a long time.
Yeah, I think you're
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. And so
Yeah, I think-
imagine getting your bilirubin result back 24 to 48 hours after it was drawn. And that whole time you don't receive treatment until you get that back.
This has been a really tough one. You know, our temptation, especially when moms are coming to us and especially coming to Rose and they're pregnant right now or they've lost many children and they're just desperate for kind of the green light to go again because there's a path forward for them. But this has been a really tough one to find a solution to, you know, with both the prenatal and neonatal monitoring. We are always talking through potential solutions. We found some incredible centers and doctors who really want to offer the best possible care, but with their resources and all the other things they manage. Like they're not just managing HDFN. There's a lot in their daily life that they're dealing with and they need support. And so, you know, in the past, Dr. Moise has lectured to training programs in Nairobi. We've also arranged for virtual lectures in blood preparation for IUT with Dr. Mark Yazer, who's a really well-known blood banker, neonatal management for HDFN with Dr. Tim Barr, who we all know from the podcast. And we're hoping to do something similar with MCA Doppler ultrasound training. We really want to raise money or find a grant to pay for a good ultrasound machine for especially one missionary hospital in particular that we love very much that offers amazing support to allo-immunized moms. Or even just trying to get a billimeter, which is like those little skin scanners that they use to check bilirubin levels on babies. If a hospital just had one, that would be a huge game changer to let them monitor these babies for high bilirubin, for HDFN, or just for neonatal jaundice, you know?
Yeah, and if on that note, if anyone listening feels moved to be a part of the solution, we'd really love your help. The missionary hospital that Molly was talking about, we work with and we love them and we trust them deeply. They're currently waiting for a billimeter so they can check all of their newborns for jaundice or high bilirubin levels. And that's really important for monitoring HDFN babies right after birth and would give a much more timely lab result than what we were talking about earlier, the 24 to 48 hours. The cost for one of these meters is around $2,000 US, but having one could just completely change outcomes for these babies. So if you are in the position to help and you would consider donating, we'll share a link in the show notes for that.
Are we ready for treatment? Let's go on to the next pillar.
Let's
Treatment. Here we go. All right, this is a big one. Well, they're all pretty important. They're all pretty big.
That's why
but
there's
this is-
5 pillars.
That's why they're. Yep.
go. You're like,
there we
that's why I
go.
made it that way.
That's exactly what I was going for with my educational resource idea. All right. Um, okay, so treatment is another, I do think it's another area that in almost every country needs improvement, I think. Maybe not the Netherlands. They're
Yeah, that may
just
be
handling
our
it.
exception. Yes.
Yeah. But it's a difficult one because HDFN treatment does require, specialized equipment, physicians with experience and training in the specifically in the IUT technique and then timing of the IUTs, and you need to have quick access to matched donor blood, post birth phototherapy beds, and it's just a lot. Rose, what do you think? Can you tell us a little bit about the treatment options for HDFN in Kenya?
Yeah, sure. So we do have very limited options, especially for patients in the public sector who don't have
Right.
the private insurance. And like you said, a lot of things have to fall into place and to have access to proactive treatments for HDFN. And most of these things are just hard to find in Kenya.
Like, can you list off some things that are needed but super hard to find?
Mm-hmm. So, in this case, I would be thinking of ultrasound machines, IUT needles, matched donor blood for IUTs and neonatal transfusions, quick lab results. Well, because you guys know timing is so crucial, and MFM training, phototherapy beds, and Billy blankets, and of course, if we don't have the monitoring, how do we know when treatment is needed?
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And it actually reminds me of something that struck me when we were touring one of the hospitals. They had a room full to the brim of donated equipment that is broken. And so it was also a completely new thought to me that anything that comes as a support to try to make these challenges better has to be sustainable too. Like, what happens when the phototherapy light bulb goes out? Who do you call? Where do you get the new light bulb? Because if you don't have that, it goes in the room, it just goes in there. And so finding a solution that makes sense for the circumstances surrounding it is also so important. And it can feel so overwhelming to look at all those barriers and even just hear them listed out like you just did, Rose. But like you said about the monitoring leading to the treatment, I think it's essential that we look at the gaps in care critically if we want to find a solution to them. But how do allo moms in Kenya handle this, sort of the burden of knowing what some of those challenges are ahead of them?
Sometimes, Molly, it really gets discouraging and saddening at the same time because as we speak right now, a good number of allo-immunized women have been able to understand this disease, which is one thing I'm really happy about when it comes to advocating. But they can only do much when it comes to accessing the care needed, right? And we have moms amongst us who've lost up to 8 babies. Some have lost 6 babies, 5 babies. And they're just eager and hopeful that one day they'll be able to hold their own babies. But with what level of care?
Yeah. Our hearts are with every single one of these moms. And we've only seen a tiny glimpse of their pain. But I can vividly remember sitting at that patient meeting, taking women's medical histories, Bethany, that we were at, and feel like we carry those stories with us every single day. And that's why we've been working so hard, or trying to work so hard, to help fill in the treatment gaps wherever we can. We've been able to provide things like Billy blankets to treat newborn jaundice, specialized IUT needles for hospitals performing IUTs, and then those educational resources, which are just so important. And it's not everything, and there's definitely still a long way to go, especially as we continue to learn. But I feel like every small step, every piece of progress creates ripples and is meaningful. And hopefully the people we work with are feeling that too.
Yeah, so we've also put like a lot of effort into donor blood collection and distribution as well. And we're so proud to partner with the O Negative Foundation and their founder, John Moretti. We all know him. So,
Love John.
yeah. And let's just talk about what he does.
He's also a good time.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, he's fun. He's silly.
Oh, that guy.
So what John basically does is to coordinate responses to appeals for negative blood groups across Kenya by organizing blood drives and promoting awareness about blood donation. So John and I join hands during those blood drives where we share educational materials sensitizing donors on the importance of knowing your blood group and donating blood, and also creating awareness on HDFN.
And also what John does is incredible, where he sort of he keeps this database of people who are Rh negative. And then when somebody urgently needs Rh negative blood, even hospitals will call him and say, somebody is bleeding right now, or somebody needs a blood transfusion right now. And John stops what he's doing and just starts calling through his list to find somebody nearby who can stop what they're doing and go donate. And it's so, so critical, because there's a lot of sort of directed donation, it sounds like, in Kenya, where there's not blood on store, but you need to find somebody who will come and give the blood.
Yes,
Yeah,
something I
that's
think
right.
some listeners don't realize. I mean, we didn't know this until we learned it through Rose and John, is that in some cultures, people prefer to donate only if they are directing the donation to a specific person. So in these cases, it's very unusual to just donate blood, not knowing where it's going, and then just having lots of donor blood available. So when blood is urgently needed for someone, that person has to go out and find a donor, have their blood type tested, have them take off work, then process the blood, which sometimes needs to be sent to a different hospital entirely for processing, pay for the processing costs themselves, and then transfuse. It's just so many barriers. And that whole process can take days. And if someone needs blood urgently, that kind of delay can be the difference between life and death. So what John is doing, and you, Rose, improving awareness and even comfort around donation is such a huge need.
And it's so interesting to think about the hesitation with donating blood to a stranger. Like, we only know that type of blood donation here in the US, right? I don't think we would even be able to if we were like, hey, my brother needs a blood transfusion. Can I come in and donate for him? Do you think that would be possible here? I don't think it would be.
I think in rare circumstances you can do direct donation, but
Yeah.
they sometimes
so
will
it's
tell you like
different.
what hospital your blood was sent to, but you don't know
Right.
the
Yeah,
that's
person.
I do get a text
It's like
where
a
my blood gets
huge
sent, which
HIPAA
is cool.
violation here.
Right,
True.
exactly. Right. So
We love some red
that's-
tape here in America.
Oh
It's
man.
our favorite.
That's But it is like super necessary to have blood on hand, right? When there's an emergency. And so I think that that's just one example of like very different very different cultures and different circumstances. And so that topic of, I think, navigating cultural norms and just improving awareness in general about this disease really sets us up for our last pillar, which is maternal support. And this is so incredibly important.
Oh, good time for that. Sorry. I really wanted Eric to just play a
I didn't
little
know.
diddle there, but I couldn't.
That was like, we're being taken to Jesus. That was nice. That was a nice break, though. Like, I feel energized.
You're welcome.
I feel some adrenaline
Yeah, there you go.
coursing through my veins after that.
Gotta
So that's
elevate
nice.
that pillar.
There we
It's
go.
like, is it time to go to heaven?
This is it. Podcast is over. for everyone.
Oh my gosh. Oh, it's so good. Thank you, Molly. Thank you
You're
for that gift. Okay. All right. Anyway, back to like pretty serious stuff.
To a really serious discussion.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So we're looking at maternal support, Molly. Okay.
Okay.
No, it is really important.
Yeah.
It's important
That's why
always.
I sang about it.
Okay, exactly. That's why we're being hosted on our way to heaven. But it is very important, maternal support. And I do think the moms often get overlooked in this disease because it's the baby, the fetus, the neonate whose life is actually at risk from HDFN. But the moms need support. And especially those moms who are in an environment like this, where HDFN survival rates are actually much lower and mothers are suffering through multiple losses and there's limited access to the care that they need. And then there's also those cultural norms and expectations for women that are actually different from what we're kind of used to, at least here in the US. So, Rose, please tell us a little bit about those cultural differences and the stigma around being Rh negative and around fetal and infant loss for women in Kenya.
This is kind of hard to put into words, but there's really a lot of pressure on women here to have babies, and we usually have larger family sizes as well. And it just happens that all of the responsibilities of these lands on the woman too, you know. And we're fully responsible for the pregnancy, the baby, the health of the baby, the care of the baby. And if something goes wrong, if we have infertility or if we lose a baby, guess who the blame goes to? On us. And a lot of times I have sort of girl talk with women when we're talking about their stories, and some women's husbands just happen to leave them if they're losing babies, and sometimes experience a lot of grief and pressure, you know, from their extended families for not having living children. There's also a lot of pressure, and you get really affected mentally. But then your husband or your in-laws expecting you to provide another baby in the family is really overwhelming, because most of this is out of control, and all of this can feel really crushing.
Yeah, it's really sobering to hear how much weight is placed just on the mom, especially when they're navigating like a high risk pregnancy disease or facing something as complex and heartbreaking as recurrent pregnancy loss. I can't imagine going through a pregnancy like this without access to the information and the care and the resources I need, but then adding on top of that, not having the emotional support too. And if you're doing that, you're doing all of that in a setting where not only awareness is low, but then there's also a stigma and blame placed on women. It's heartbreaking. It must be so hard.
And I think that's why our grant from Global Genes was so important and helpful, because we were able to create some educational resources and have support meetings with LO moms and moms who have lost babies. So they could be informed about the real cause of their losses, and I know that how it feels, and understand how they can protect future babies. And it was important for them to know that none of this was their fault, and you know that HDFN is strictly biological. We have all sort of agreed to share the resources with our husbands and family members, so they could really understand HDFN. And the women talked about their pregnancies and their struggles, and we felt so supported by each other. like that comfort by just having someone who's had something who's been through something you've been through before. It
Yeah.
just, yeah, it really does some kind of magic.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that idea to go home and share those resources with family members. That's such a good idea.
Yeah, like really let them know you can read this and just get to see what really happens.
Yeah, the support groups that you run, Rose, are incredible. And having only had the privilege of attending one, it was just so overwhelmingly supportive and encouraging and energizing. And everybody was just so happy to spend their time there. And I think a lot of that credit goes to you for setting the tone of such a supportive and open environment. You know, it's just really powerful. And I'm sure it's just such a lifeline for the women that you support.
Yeah. It's kind of a fulfilling feeling, I guess. Yeah. And so, okay, I know I just shared a lot, but I want to make, time to ask you ladies about what it feels like to see and learn about these things from your own perspective as Americans. I think that could be really relatable for, listeners who have similar backgrounds as you three.
Oh, okay. I don't even know how to talk about how deeply affected that I know I was by just learning from you and observing in person. But then I also feel badly for even, I don't know. It's like I don't even want to give myself that space to process it because this is not about me. But I feel so, so lucky to get to observe and learn and be shaped by this. And so I feel like I could just maybe I could share some images that will never leave my mind from our last trip that has sort of shaped a lot of my understanding of this, which is still growing, and obviously my understanding is still in its infancy. But there are just pictures that I won't get out of my head that I feel like other listeners, if they could picture them too, like it would give them a little glimpse. Like people walking along the highways to get from point A to point B, which could take all day. And then, of course, there's no convenience store. So you would stop at the side of the road and make a fire to cook your food for the day. And then the hospitals, I can't forget seeing the clothing just draped on the trees because family members are responsible for feeding and clothing their sick family member in the hospital, or at the orphanage, just a clay home sitting in dust and rocky soil with wastewater coming out right next to the drinking water. Or even like, Bethany, do you remember how Rose was so kind to get us a fan for our bedroom because she knows how intolerant we are of stagnant air? And then that little boy who lives in their apartment complex saw the fan and just stared at it and touched it and stood in front of it for like an hour, And then
Can I just say, after we just let in someone else's child,
he really wanted to come in.
Into Rose's apartment when she
We
was
thought
not
maybe
around.
Rose knew him.
He
Rose
just
like,
was
"Who's
at the
this guy?"
door, and we were like, "Welcome, you must belong here."
Yeah.
What were we? I don't. And then
I don't know. He
I was
really
like-
seemed like he knew his way around.
And I was like, guys, who's this?
Yeah.
like the confident 4-year-old at the door. I don't know.
Yeah.
That was,
I would even just seeing I remember seeing, don't you have a group chat for your apartment complex? And sometimes people share just one infant car seat amongst themselves to borrow for car rides, and just those things that I would never even think to consider as like something that other people need to plan for and work around. But also, there's such beautiful things that I miss so much, like a mango the size of my face, just sitting in front of me. And then the sound of the church choir practice. It goes on for hours and
so
hours.
nice.
And then everyone's windows are open because there's no air conditioning that drowns out the sound. So you just hear it carrying through over the sound of
Right.
everything. And then just the trust that so many people have in something higher and bigger than them, and they just freely offer that gratitude and that trust. And, even when we were worried about our lost luggage, especially me, I was like way obsessing over our lost luggage. And then a friend who was there just shrugged, I remember, and he was like, have faith, it will come. It did, by the way. But just having that mindset, it's so humbling. And then coming back home and adjusting to our perfectly paved roads. And then we complain about being in traffic for 10 minutes. I literally just did that yesterday. And then our kids whine that we don't have enough good snacks in the pantry. And I just feel like, who are we to think that we have the right to all of this abundance? Because we really don't. I mean, none of us do, literally none of us. And yet we forget routinely that we're not owed all of these things. And so all we can do now is just show our gratitude and use our privilege to try to better the lives of the people around us. And that's like a level of awareness that I struggle to, but try to maintain all the time now. And that's like one of the greatest gifts I've ever received. And it's just something I wish for everyone. And I think about how lucky we all are that we get to incorporate that awareness into the work that this foundation does,
So good. Totally agree.
Yeah. The daily living differences between here at home and Kenya are like just staggering. It's like night and day. And
Yeah.
I think it hit us all really hard when we came home. What did we say? We had culture shock, like reverse culture shock.
Yeah.
When we came back. But it was like the overabundance, the entitlement, and like the sheer amount of stuff in my house that I just could not stand when I got home. It just felt so excessive and a monument to like excess. And it's not to shame how we live here, because that's just how our culture is. But you realize how differently people live, and it changes you, and it changes the way that you see things. And I guess for me, like the biggest thing that hit me so hard and made the biggest impact was the medical differences. I don't know if that's because of my background in healthcare or we've all been patients, but I just remember like so vividly when we walked into the NICU, I had this overwhelming, like immediate urge to throw on a pair of scrubs and help. And it's because I just could not register the conditions. Like I could not comprehend them. And as a nurse, you kind of have this unspoken bond with other nurses. Like you just know collectively, you guys, we've seen some pretty awful things and we have this automatic respect for one another. But the nurses in this NICU were just on a different level. They were truly angels on earth. They were doing this incredible work. They had so many patients. Like here in the US in a NICU, you have 1 or 2 patients. They had limited equipment. I mean, basic supplies, things we take for granted just weren't available. And I had this moment where it just sank in that we are so privileged in the US for the level of care that we have access to. We are just so very privileged. And that's not to say that there aren't issues with healthcare in America, but it is very privileged. And then I had this like devastating realization that the only reason Liam is alive, my son, is because of where I happened to be born. And that's it. That's it. The outcome we had, the care we received, it wasn't because we were more deserving or I advocated in a different way. It's simply geography and the circumstance that I was born into. And just this like overall feeling of unfairness almost. Like you can't not go back to a time where you didn't see that or think that or feel that, and you carry it. And then you wonder, why me? Why is my son alive and Max and Alexis aren't? And when we first got home, it was crippling. I mean, I had zero tolerance for complaints from friends or family about like first world problems. I felt guilty spending money. I laugh now, but when my second son was born, he had medical challenges and I was debating whether he should be seen at Mass General or Boston Children's Hospital. And in retrospect, I'm like, what a privileged decision I had to make to pick between the 2 best hospitals in the world, you know?
Right.
And as more time has passed, it's gotten better. And like Molly said, we've tried to channel that experience into more productive work and how we can help. But that trip was and will always be something that completely changed me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think all of us were permanently changed. And I'm guessing, Rose, you felt the same way after all that you went through on your trip to the US.
Definitely.
And of course,
Definitely. Yeah.
Lucas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Um, so from my perspective, like I said earlier, I grew up in Africa and then moved to the US as a teenager. And so I had not been back to Africa since I left as a teenager. So it felt like it was interesting because I've never been to Kenya before that. But when I got there, I felt like I was at home. It felt so comfortable and familiar. And I think that's it. They are very similar. I lived in Zimbabwe and South Africa. And so it felt just, it kind of felt, oh, I'm getting emotional, you guys.
And you're gonna get us emotional now.
Oh no, I'm sorry. It was like, it felt like seeing my old best friend or something after years. My gosh, I'm sorry. This is, yeah, I didn't expect to get sad about this. I mean, emotional about this, but well, this is what I'm really crying about is that my perspective growing up was from a child's perspective. And so going back, it was like I was seeing it all of these similarities and like my original home, but through the eyes of a mother and through the eyes of an alloimmunized mother, you know, who has very limited access to the tools that she needs to protect her child. And just like both of you said, Katie and Molly and Rose, you know all too well, it's so hard to be a mother and not have access to the things that you need to keep your baby safe and healthy. And so that was just, you know, new, seeing things from the perspective of a mother. And I did want to point out that there are a lot of similarities. I know almost this whole podcast episode has been about all of these differences, right, that we are seeing, but there are so many similarities. And especially when we're looking through the eyes of a mother, I think that's where we connect and have this like everlasting bond, right? As mothers do throughout the world. And it was really meaningful to see these mothers on the other side of the world open up about their struggles and their concerns and the things that they want for their families, and to just relate immediately to that, right? As mothers. And it was beautiful. And these mothers are so resilient. Their strength is so admirable. And I know that they are put in these positions where they kind of don't have a choice, right? But to be resilient and strong. And that's really hard. And that's not their choice. But they rise up, they rise to the occasion, and they sacrifice so much on a daily basis for their families, for their children. They go to such lengths to feed and care for their children and their families. And I was just amazed by the beautiful mothers there. And another thing was that I was so amazed by the resilience of the medical staff, which you pointed out, Katie. Just it feels like a triage mode all the time, you know, saving lives as fast as you can with whatever tools you have, and being like flexible and creative and trying your best to do what you can in the moment to save the life, and then go on to the next patient and the next patient. And it's such an, I think, emotional burden, and it takes a toll. And yet these people are showing up day after day in these circumstances, and um, serving these patients and caring for these moms and babies. And I was just very impressed by that. This is something we talk about on a regular basis at Aloe Hope. And I think maybe we could just look at it very quickly before we wrap up and see what we are trying to do to make a difference, even if it's only for one baby or a limited amount. It's what we can do. And so let's just look at a few things that we're working on.
Well, we shared this earlier, but we did fundraise in the past and were able to buy phototherapy materials, so bilirubin blankets for babies who need it in a large public hospital in Nairobi. So this is a big NICU, and they only had a couple phototherapy lights that were super outdated, and so these Billy blankets are making a huge difference. And Rose was able to deliver those personally. I'll never forget that picture.
That picture.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And so now we're trying to get the Billy meter, like we talked about earlier, for that wonderful missionary hospital. It's called Kajabe. And they have an incredible NICU, an incredible staff. I didn't get to visit this time around, but I know you guys did, and you were very touched by the people that you met there and the work that they're doing. There's just so many supply needs. There's ultrasounds that are very outdated, they need help with. So trying to fundraise for all of these things are just one small thing that we're doing.
And we're always working on finding a path for safe treatment for HDFN, really in every country. I mean, I feel like that was one of your ultimate goals, Bethany, even from the beginning of the foundation. And, right now, this episode is focused on Kenya because we have Rose there doing so much of the important in-person work. And the hope is to have a path where someone who thinks they have antibodies can have an antibody screen paid for by the foundation, which, by the way, costs what? Is it $12? 12 US dollars? And if you're ever, so if you're ever wondering how far your money can go when you can only donate what we may consider to be a small amount, there's your answer, And if they have antibodies, they can hopefully go to a trusted doctor for their ultrasounds, for MCAs, and they can deliver at a hospital with a safe and well-staffed NICU. That's the dream. And so arranging a path for every country, but for every mom right now who Rose is working with, that's the goal. And we're taking steps every day in that direction.
And that is our goal internationally, right? Is to create a pathway for safe care in every single country. And one day we're going to get there. We are going to do it.
And also, Rose, I don't think we can say enough times everything that you do every day. Even we don't even get to see it. Of course, we're not there with you every day. But when we were with you, just the number of phone calls, like 30, 40, 50 phone calls, in-person meetings, talking to doctors, talking to nurses, talking to blood banks, coordinating blood, getting laboratory test results sent, hearing people's appeals for having anti-D injections, arranging for payment, documenting receipts. So much. You do so much. And you are the lifeline for so many of these women. And truly, I'm sure Bethany and Katie would agree. I have never heard you complain. Never once. It's incredible. Anyway, we love you very much.
Yes.
You're all gonna make me cry now.
Okay.
Like the toughest person here, but they're gonna make me cry, you guys. I'm
You're
holding
very
it.
tough.
You are
You
definitely the toughest.
How annoying is it when a bunch of Americans show up to Kenya and we just won't stop crying? How annoying is that? Oh, gosh. It must be so annoying.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, last thought before we go. I just want to say again that the strength and the depth of a mother's love is universal, and the consuming maternal need to protect our children is also universal, which I think we highlighted in this throughout this episode and throughout our work at Aloe Hope. And so I want to say to the mothers in Kenya and all mothers in under-resourced areas, we see you, we see your love for your children. It's beautiful and it's inspiring. And we are going to do our best to address these critical needs for screening and education and prevention and treatment for HDFN and maternal support. And to our listeners, our work in Africa is part of a larger fight against global health inequities, and our mission to ensure that every mother, no matter her circumstances, no matter where she lives, has what she needs to protect her family. We're going to keep working towards that.
And as always, we're so grateful for our incredible community that makes this work possible.
Yes.
All right, it's time, guys. It's time.
Oh no.
Should we make Rose? Should we have Rose wrap it up for us?
Yeah, Rose, you wrap it up.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna switch it up for you guys. I'm gonna say it in both English and Swahili. We call that Sheng, I guess. I don't know. But here goes nothing. Whether wewe ni patient, provider, or otherwise affected by antibodies in pregnancy, we are here for you. Tuko na great resources on our website at allohopefoundation.org. That's Allo spelled A-L-L-O, hopefoundation.org.
Woo! That was so
Yay! Thanks for listening.
good. Yay.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my
Oh,
god.
we did
I
it.
wonder-
Oh.
Oh my god.
Woo!
You guys.
The Allo podcast is offered by the Allo Hope Foundation, a nonprofit organization. This means that our ability to continue this work depends on corporate sponsorships, small research grants, and donations. While sponsorships and grants are vital, they're often restricted to specific activities, and they do not cover the everyday work that keeps our mission moving. Things like creating educational materials, writing grant applications, running our social media, and especially managing our rapidly growing patient support group where we counsel women every day. They also do not cover the direct support we provide to families who cannot access life-saving care, whether that's the cost of an antibody screen in Kenya or bus fare for a mom in the US who needs to travel for an intrauterine transfusion. If you've ever wondered whether a donation of any size makes an impact, it truly does. Please visit our show notes for information on how to donate to AHF or to become a recurring donor. Your support gives our small organization the stability we need to continue this work and ensure no family faces HDFN alone.